So over 50 million tons of electronic waste are produced in the developed countries and globally every single year. We're talking about 50 million tons of e-waste generated globally every single year. Now, out of this is only about 20% that is properly recycled or disposed of. Ghana is at the receiving end. It is becoming a favorable destination for the illegal exploitation and dumping of e-waste. Between 600 to 800 container loads, shipping container loads of electronic waste gets shipped from the developed countries to Ghana every single month. And it obviously has environmental and public health consequences for Ghana. In terms of environmental consequences, we are losing air quality, water bodies, the rivers, the lagoons, and even the ocean are being filled with electronic waste as a result of the illegal exploitation. The land is also being destroyed, and agriculture ultimately would be affected. We are talking about public health, which also means that the young people, some as young as 7, who go to these dump sites to salvage metals, dismantle and burn the components of the e-waste to salvage metals, are being affected. Studies have shown that a lot of the young people who go to these dump sites to work have elevated lead levels in their blood. And mind you, electronics also contain plastics. We are in an era where we're talking about microplastics, but we're filling our water bodies and our human tissues with microplastics. Because at the dump sites where these plastics are dismantled and all that, each time the rain comes, everything gets flushed into the water bodies and they end up in the ocean. And we have living organisms, aquatic organisms in these oceans that we eat. And we are talking about microplastics filled with flame retardants, and also chemicals like lead, mercury. All these are heavy metals that should not be in human tissue or be in the environment. We are basically destroying public health and the environment. But this also presents human rights implications for our people. If you think of the fact that we all have a right to life and a right to dignity and also a human right to a safe, clean and healthy and sustainable environment, but how can we ever fulfill or realize our human right to life or our human right to a clean, sustainable environment if we continue to export and dump electronic waste from the developed countries to Ghana? It's impossible. Global leaders, political leaders have a role to play to tackle the illegal exploitation and dumping of e-waste from the developed countries to Ghana. In the first place, countries in the developed world, in Europe in particular, that are sending the waste to Africa and to Ghana have signed the Basel Convention. It is important that they respect the Basel Convention. It is important that they put together tougher regulations, tougher measures to tackle the exploitation of e-waste. They must tackle it from the source, and this is the source. They must go to the ports and make sure that electronic waste, which is toxic, which is hazardous, is not leaving. Manufacturers have a greater responsibility. They manufacture all these electronic gadgets that are filled with toxic substances, with all the chemicals. It is important that governments put together mandatory regulations, laws to restrain, to hold these manufacturers in check, to tell them not to put all these carcinogenic chemicals, toxic chemicals in the electronic products that they produce. Let me also mention that all these manufacturers, almost all of them, are engaged in planned obsolescence. Planned obsolescence, I'm talking about the deliberate, intentional shortening of the lifespan of electronic products, just so they can make profits. But we cannot continue to make profits at the expense of the environment and public health and also vulnerable poor people in developing countries who cannot recycle or do anything with the waste that is sent from the developed countries. That is to say that the manufacturing companies should be mandated to stop the planned obsolescence and the deliberate shortening of the life cycle of these electronic gadgets. And they should also be responsible, for the entire life cycle of the products that they have produced. That is to say, if they produce the smartphones, the computers and the laptops, they should be responsible right from design to ride where these electronic gadgets go to die, or when they are to be recycled or disposed of. They should collect them and properly dispose of them or recycle them, and not send them to the developing countries. Consumers have a role to play. Consumers have the purchasing power. You know, sometimes I'm inclined to think it's not fair to heap the blame on consumers. But it's not about heaping blame. It's about who has the purchasing power. Who does the purchasing? It is consumers. They should have the environment in mind. They should have the health of people in mind. And they should have the poor developing countries in mind, where these things are often shipped to. So the obsession with electronic gadgets should be a thing of the past. If they no longer want the newest, shiniest, trendiest electronic gadgets, they probably would have to think and delay buying this gadget. What I want to say is that what is going on now is not proper. It's not acceptable. It is unacceptable to use developing countries as the dumping grounds, as the garbage for the developed countries. And this is clearly unacceptable to do that. There are people also in all these affected countries that are defending the earth. I think the voices of the defenders of the environment, defenders of the earth, should be amplified. They should be protected. A lot of times they are harassed, they are threatened, and they are abused. They should be given all the support, all the international solidarity that they would want to let them go on. And their rights would also have to be respected. Thank you.